Hey, everybody. Today I have for you podcast number 41. Today's podcast is titled Finding His Way. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Lombardi, and this is the Limitless Life Network podcast where we flesh out all the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you deserve. And today's podcast is titled Finding His Way. It's a pretty good podcast, I gotta say. I've just finished writing the notes for it, and I'm excited to deliver the content. So here we go. I want to just take a moment to thank you all for listening. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend 20 minutes or so with me to gain some knowledge, hopefully some inspiration, and help you live a better life. And certainly, if you could share this with other people, well, you know what? You're spreading some joy, spreading some love, and maybe helping somebody else out. Also, if you want to hit the subscribe button, if you're new to the podcast, that would be great. That way you wouldn't miss any other podcasts. And if you leave a comment, I love comments. I try to respond when I see them, as well as nothing better than an in-person comment if you see me face-to-face. And it just keeps me inspired to keep doing this. And so far, 41 in a row. Haven't missed one yet. This is great. So I've got some great feedback from the last couple podcasts. Still, people asking for my wife to come back on. She was thinking about it tonight, but maybe next time. Maybe next time my wife will join me again. I think she's going to be a frequent flyer. I think we're going to see her on the podcast on a regular basis. She's a natural. I think she's a natural. So. She's gonna drive the ratings up. We're gonna get lots of reviews, lots of great input with my wife for sure. All right, so on with the show. Here we go. So today's podcast title, Finding His Way, and the backstory has to do with last week. My youngest son Timothy returned home after 3 weeks on a mission trip, and I personally have never done a mission trip. My wife has never done a mission trip. As a matter of fact, none of his siblings have ever gone on a mission trip. So our youngest son, Timothy, did a 3-week mission trip. And it comes on the heels of just completing his first year at Elam Bible College. So let me back up and give you a bit of the behind-the-scenes story or more context or background so you can understand, like, how did our son Timothy end up at Elam Bible College? So Timothy has been different than all of our other children, as every child is different in a family. But Timothy really didn't do super well in traditional school settings. It was always a struggle for him to learn certain things. Some things he excelled at, but other things he really, really struggled with. And we come to find out he definitely has some auditory processing challenges. He has some learning challenges for certain things, but he's very gifted in other areas. So we all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. Unfortunately, traditional school wants you to be good at everything, and that was not the case. So Timothy did some homeschooling. He was our first child to ever be homeschooled. We did that for a couple of years, and then he really wanted to go back to school, so we sent him back to public school for a while, and he really loved the social aspect of it. He makes friends great, wherever he goes. He's super social, but eventually, again, the fact that he had these learning challenges, the school was trying to help him out the best they could. Ultimately, we had to go back to homeschooling, and that's where he finished his schooling until he went on to college. And we ended up sending him to Elam Bible College just out of sheer, what are we going to do? Where is he going to fit in? Let's just send him on a program where he can just not worry about what he does academically, but let's see how he grows as a human being. Let's see how he grows as a person. And they offer a program called Launch where you can basically just go try it out for a year. And we had no expectations. This was the first time we sent one of our kids away to college, and I really didn't care what kind of grades he pulled. I really just wanted him to figure out where his place was in life. What does God have in store for you? Find out who God really has made you to be. So that's really what my wife and I prayed about it, and we really wanted him to just do that very thing. So that's how he got there. And to say it was the perfect fit would be an understatement. He came back a year. I mean, we saw it on the breaks. Like we could see the changes happening. But after this mission trip, he came back a totally different human being, a different person, and it's been wonderful. Right from the time he got home, the first thing he did was went up into his room and just basically threw a bunch of things away. Some artwork that he had on his wall, he got rid of it, but he threw bags of things away that he had, as an artist, that he made that were on the dark side of things. And he realized the difference in where he was to where he is, and just a totally 180, and super proud of how he's changed and how he's figured out, a better path. And, we have no worries about this young man. We know he's going to do great things. So the mission experience was eye-opening, life-changing, and it was just a total immersion into things that he's never seen before, never been exposed to. And it just was just unbelievable for him. So his stories were fantastic. I should probably have him on the podcast as well to talk about this. Maybe we will next time. But anyway, so I've got 5 points for you to talk about, because I think we could all learn something from this. There's several things that my wife came up with, I came up with. So point number 1 is, when conventional isn't working, don't rest until unconventional becomes your new conventional. And this is really hats off to my wife for really just continuing to pursue whatever was going to work for him. And, that was my whole point, even with homeschooling, was that, we're not looking to reproduce what traditional school is. Let's work on really focusing on his strengths. And so that worked really well, and that's where he excelled. He excelled in art. He excelled in music. He's become a very good graphic artist. He's become a very gifted musician because we poured his time and energy in those gifts. Is he ever going to be a math whiz? Absolutely not. That's okay. Not everybody needs to know how to do calculus. And as a matter of fact, I don't use calculus anymore, even though I learned it. And I think that's true for all of us, is that sometimes we come up against problems and we're trying to solve them the way everybody else tries to solve them. And sometimes you just need to think outside the box. Sometimes you need to try something totally different. You need to just totally flip it on its other angle and just go at it from a totally different approach and see what happens. Because if you don't, you'll never know. And you obviously can figure out what doesn't work. And by continuing to try things that don't work and that are not producing the result you're looking for, if there's no growth happening, why do you keep pursuing it? Why do we keep pouring all this energy and trying to pound things through? It's not the way. The way should not be that difficult. Yes, there's struggle along the way, but when you find that sweet spot and growth is happening, it should be very fast. It should flow because it's the right thing, right? So that's point number 1. When conventional isn't working, don't rest until unconventional is your new conventional. Point number 2 is congruency trumps contradictions. And this goes, we've talked a bit about contradictions in the past. We've talked about being congruent. This is a really great point because it really has a lot to do with like people that you hang around with. I know my son, when he came back and started cleaning out his bedroom, he realized that his old self was a contradiction to his new self. And if he had those reminders on his wall, if he had those reminders there all the time, there could be potential for the leaking of his old self to come back in and replace the new self. The growth that had taken place could easily be stymied. It could easily be transitioned back to the old way. It's very easy for somebody to fall back into old habits. All it takes is just a little bit of a foot in the door for that to happen. If you think about somebody that struggles with alcoholism, all it's got to take is that one sip, that one drink, and the next thing you know, you're back at it again. You could be 1,000 days sober, and then you have that one drink, and then all those emotions and those habits and behaviors come rushing back, and you go right down that path again. So you've got to remove these contradictions from your life. And sometimes it's a new friend group. Sometimes it's a new location. Sometimes it's just a new job, a change of scenery. For him, it was leaving town and getting out of what he was doing here to go somewhere else, to be in a different culture, and it changed him for sure. Point number 3 is a really great point, and I got it out of a book. I'm not going to take credit for this. The author of the book is Jonathan Cahn. I've used several things out of this. This is a book I read often, practically daily. I read something out of here, but this has to do with point number 3. Has to do with the weights of the balance. And if you remember back in the scales of justice, and you have weights, but back in ancient times they would weigh things, and they had a specific size stones that they used as weights. So, if they put a certain stone on there with a certain marking on it, that stone's weight equaled a certain value of maybe silver or some type of coin. So they would put it on the scale, and that would be tell you the truth of whatever you were putting on the other side of the scale, where it measured up. It would tell you exactly where you were. So they would use those stones to weigh things out, to figure out, the value of whatever you're putting on the other side of the scale. Well, some merchants would have stones that looked like the scale of measure stones, the stones that actually were the true weight, but they were false. They were faulty stones. They were phony. They were counterfeit. They would look like it, but they would be lighter than the actual stone. So the stone may say 1 shekel, but when you put it on the scale, it was actually lighter than a shekel, right? So they would say, "Oh, this is 1 shekel," and so that would be a huge contradiction, but it would also be a falsehood. You'd be scheming people, you'd be scamming people, right? And so the point of all of this is that never change the truth to fit your will. That's the point. The point is that we never want to change the truth to fit our will. In other words, instead, what you want to do is change your will to fit the truth. That's the difference, right? But unfortunately, our ego or our motives, oftentimes we want to change the truth to fit our agenda, what our will is, right? But in reality, what should you do and what will work better for you is to actually change your will, change your motives, change your driving forces to line up with the truth. And when that happens, your life's going to take an accelerating path. It's going to blow past trying to pretend your way through things. So never bend the word of God to fit your life. Instead, bend your life to fit the word of God. And that's really what our son did. He was kind of like he was trying to do the right thing, but he was still doing other things that were not really congruent, right? So he was bending things, right? But when he left to go off to college, he cleaned that up, and he realized that he needed to change and fit the word of God instead of trying to make it all work for him, right? So beware of false standards is all I'm saying. Like, there are standards out there that our culture really pushes, and we just really need to be aware of what's true and what's not true. Okay? So point number 4 is really a question, and I want to talk about this a little bit, and that is, why is it? Why is it that discipline and structure are so effective? We see this used all the time. We see it in the military, right? You take a bunch of young men and women, teenagers, oftentimes struggle in life a little bit. They all come from different backgrounds. They all have different issues, and they put them through this massive filtration process where they shave their heads, they give them a drill sergeant, they give them, uniforms, and everything is structured from every minute of their life is laid out for them. So there is no thinking otherwise. There is no downtime. And on the other end of 10 weeks later, what do you have? You have a trained soldier. You have recreated that person because you have taken all the decision making for themselves out of the equation. Therefore, every decision being made for them and learning to follow orders, on the other end of it, you produce this soldier. And the same thing happens for us in life. If we create discipline and structure, you can create whatever type of life you want to create for yourself. And if it's based on truth, if it's based on the Word of God, and you create structure in that, you're going to be blessed with what are called the fruits of the Spirit, So that is a wonderful thing. And so why are they so effective? Because it takes all the ambiguity out of it. That's why it's so effective. When we have a downtime and free time, what do? You do whatever you want to do. You waste time. You may fill it with things that are non-productive, non-inspiring, versus when you have structure, you're working towards something that is inspiring. You have a goal. You have an outcome you're looking to achieve, and you'll get there much faster the more structure and the more discipline that you have. Point number 5 is the effects of immersion. The effects of immersion, the effects of being thrown into a totally new environment, being thrown into a place where you've never experienced something before. Well, this is where the greatest growth happens in all of our lives, and we try to avoid it at all costs, because this happens when we get really uncomfortable. And there's right on that edge of being comfortable and uncomfortable. That's really where growth takes place. There's things that we always have a propensity towards, and that is safety, that is comfort, right? But where does the growth take place? It takes place out on the edges. It takes on the edge of comfort, on the edge of safety, just before it becomes dangerous, right? That's where growth takes place. And I can go into many different disciplines, sports, whatever it might be. The moments that make you a bit uncomfortable, you're about to experience growth. So the more you can harness that feeling and become comfortable with the way that feels, the uncomfortableness of knowing when you're leaving comfort and leaving safety a little bit, and you're getting out on the edge of being uncomfortable, and getting a little bit close to the danger, that's when you're going to grow. That's where life-changing events take place. So remove limitations by getting there, right? By taking yourself there. You don't have to do it all the time. You can do it for windows of time. You can do it for brief windows or longer windows. It's totally up to you. All right, that's all I have for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Tune in each and every week to stay connected, to be inspired, and keep moving toward your best life by stripping away your limitations. And we will see you next week.